Good afternoon. I am Tony Dattino, the president of Dattino Consulting Group and the founder of the USA Memory Championship. And I usually do my Fridays in the 5 o'clock hour, but I was reading an article this afternoon, and it's just it's so important and just so relevant to everything we do in the USA Memory Championship, in in the Maximum Memory Mastery online course, that I just didn't want to wait because I had so many different thoughts going on in my head. I didn't want to lose those thoughts. So what was I reading today that got me so worked up and ready to go and excited to share something with you? And it is about the trust imperative. Human life depends on it. Human beings depend on trusting relationships, and we suffer deeply when trust is broken. And so this whole point of the human mind and how we survive and live without trust in our lives is an imperative, as this article goes to talk out, and especially now in these times of COVID and the conflicting reports we get about masking and vaccines, and trust is just all over. And it also is relevant to the work that we want you to be able to do in improving your own memories. And so people are like, well, gee, what does trust have to do with memory? And it's the first thing I always say to people is, do you have enough of trust in yourself that you could learn skills that could improve your own memories? And people look at me with that question with a frown on their face sometimes, and very often will say, no, I don't believe I can do it. And I'm like, okay, so let's start right there. We're going to build a relationship that has trust and clearly safety in terms of yourself. We're not going to ask you to do anything that's harmful to yourself. But the important thing is we got to build trust in the fact that we're going to teach you some things that are going to be of a benefit, that you'll be able to see your own progress, and then you'll be able to reflect on that progress within yourself, so you can see it for your own eyes. You can see it for your own mind and your own ability to do. And so as I read through this article, it just was profound in what it talks about. Trust is in everything, from doctors we go to people we go buy things, from drugs and pharmaceuticals that we take. And if we fall out of that trust with any of the folks that we have relationships with, it has consequences to our own personal well-being. And so as you go through the trust imperative article, it was, trust is everything in our lives. Who can we trust? What business relationships? What personal relationships? What companies can we trust? What public officials can we believe and trust? And it drives our whole life in terms of what we do. And as I read through it, and I just thought more and more about it, I just underlined some of this. We rely on our sense of trust of people that we can identify with, that are reliable and honest and upfront. And so we don't want to worry about their motives, and we don't want to follow up on every statement they make or every comment that they make and question it and then have to investigate it. My word for it is not be totally cynical. And so we get these antennae out, especially as you get older and you get some levels of wisdom. And here we are talking about people's memories. And how do we get inside of their own blocking, their own paradigms, where we talk about trust, and it can be traumatic if you've got mistrust, or if you've ever had somebody violate that trust. The challenge I learned years ago from Dr. Joseph Ledoux out of NYU in New York City is, once you break that trust with something, that scars our brains forever. And what we can do is what he defined as, we could create overlays, meaning positive experiences that bring a different perspective to it. And yet, what do you do about it? What can you do about it? So now we talk about trust and building relationships, and the people that I have that I've met in my life over this past year of pandemic, I have some people I just trust tremendously, and they've worked to help Michael and myself, and God, I look to have long-term relationships with them. They're real people, and what I love about people that are transparent. They say it the way it is, and they say it in terms of what's relevant. And therefore, I can trust them because they tell you what's on their mind. They tell you what their thought process is. And you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to worry about what they're not telling you. They may not always tell you what you like. They may not always tell you what you want to hear, but they tell you the way it is. And so I can go on and on and on with the topic of trust, but I want to narrow it down to the trust in the work that we do in how we go about our Maximum Memory Mastery online course. And in our Maximum Memory online course, the first thing I always say to people is, do you have enough of trust in your own ability that you could learn how to improve your memories? Now, why do we pick on memories? Because I think in my life with Tony's over the past year, I have shared with you article after article talking about people worrying about their mental cognitive functions. They're worried about early cognitive impairment. They go from that to dementia. They go from there to one of the aspects of it being Alzheimer's. And people in surveys that have been done worry more about losing their mental facilities and faculties than anything else. And so I talked to a cardiologist. He says, hey, people, will do things they shouldn't be doing at the risk of a heart attack, but they worry more about their brain health than they do about their heart health. How are we going to avoid getting Alzheimer's is the biggest question of today. And so through our Maximum Memory Mastery Online, we've been working with different science institutions and reading and studying different science and research reports on, so what are some of the things that we can do to improve our cognitive function and our brain health? So as we go through this, what I wanted to share with you, how have we specifically done this so we can give people the gift of improving their own personal cognitive functions in a way that's simple enough for them to embrace and a way that can build confidence that they can do it. And when I talk to people about, why have you done the USA Memory Championship for 22 years, it's because of what I see back from people who look at it and say, there's hope for me. There's a way I can learn to do this. And it can be life-changing. It can be a way I can embrace things in my life I never thought possible. And to me, making a difference in people's lives is that which keeps me going. So to the point that which keeps me going is, how do I build trust in people and extend an olive branch or a hand or a hug or an arm that says, grab onto this and let's go through some basic lessons that allow you to begin to grow your own trust and confidence and your own abilities to seeing that you can do something that you may have thought you never could do or thought possible. And as this goes on in this article, it just talks about changing your circumstances and finding someone you can trust. It's such a sensitive issue. We have the feeling of a sting of betrayal when another person may not even mean us any harm. So how do we start to walk people down the pathway of a memory course of elements of brain health, of how you can become a super learner? How do we walk people down through that pathway and build their confidence and trust in that we mean you no harm, but we want to be able to teach you some things in little bite-sized pieces so that you can take a bite, you can see your own progress, and you can build your own self-confidence and self-trust in your own abilities. And when you see people do that, they just kind of like expand. They get to a point in their life where it's like, wow, I can do this. And I think of a woman that was an environmental service people. It's one of my favorite stories. I mean, I can go on with stories over 25 years of doing what I do. But one of my favorites when I think about this is a woman in her early 50s she was a housekeeper in a hospital. And she came to one of the workshops that I was doing on building solutions to hospital problems from frontline workers, simple concept. Wouldn't a housekeeper know how to make improvements to patients' rooms? Who would think? I would. This environmental services person did and would. But in the course of it, we got her to realize that there was more she could do with her life, because what she had always wanted to do was to be a nurse. And she never thought she could do it. She didn't have the trust in her own abilities nor the confidence that she could learn something that could actually allow her to go to nursing school and invest in the funds, obviously, of tuition for it, and then be successful at it and eventually be a real nurse. And I always think of this woman when she should be in this story, because she eventually put out a hand to her and said, you know what, you can do this. You've got the passion, the energy, the desire for it. And we can show you some of the steps that you can begin to take to build up your learning skills that you probably have accumulated. And we'll just show you the pathway on how you'll do it. So we took some of the elements that are in our maximum memory mastery, and we broke down a few to be able to get her to start in a way that built her own confidence and her own trust within her own abilities. And we clearly, in the relationship we had, said, we're not in this to do something terrible to you. I'm involved in this because I want to see you get to be a nurse. And I want to see you get to do something in your life you never thought you could possibly do. Obviously, I'm sharing this story with you because as got to go through that hospital years later, one of the biggest greetings I got and one of the biggest hugs I think I've ever gotten was from this environmental services worker who was now, what? Taking care of patients in a basic hospital unit that just gave her a joy and a love of her own life and ability to make a difference in people's lives that was totally priceless. So that when people ask me, why do I continue to do a USA Memory Championship? It clearly is not for the money. Clearly not for the money. Though I think there's huge opportunity in having USA Memory Championships in regions and in schools and colleges that it is totally undervalued at this point. Because what I have found is when people can believe in themselves and trust in their own abilities and trust in the branch that we extend to them, I think then skies are the limits. And what they can do in their lives are just endless. Because what we know today about the human brain is we have unlimited capacity to create, generate, communicate, and do things. And I'm watching yesterday on television this rocket to Mars. I mean, geez, and I'm watching it on TV, all these guys in NASA jumping up and down and clapping, cheering, and yelling as the space shuttle, which took months to get there, is landing on Mars. And I say, if we're landing, what? We're landing on Mars? And we can't figure out how to teach people how to basically improve their own knowledge, their own skills, their own ability to be super learners. There's something wrong with our educational system. And I'm on a mission, and Michael Dattino and Karen Pinson are joining me on that mission to make a difference in people's lives, to show them that they can do more in their lives than they ever thought possible. But our challenge is to build the trust and the confidence in themselves, which is how and why we've designed the online courses in the way we've designed them, which is how do we get people to take a bite of the apple and not be poisoned by the apple, but be encouraged and be invigorated by it in a way that just builds trust in the process and confidence in their abilities, that creates giant stories like this environmental services that is now a nurse caring for patients in a hospital. That is my Friday broadcast. As you can tell, I was energized by this article, and the trust imperative. I could go on and on. I may take a little bit more of this on Monday in my next broadcast, but this got me so fired up, as you might be able to tell in this broadcast, that I just wanted to take it in that, what I call the spontaneous creativity, and not wait till 5 o'clock to do my Friday night broadcast. So I could capture the spontaneous thoughts that were going through in my mind and share them with my Live with Tony audience. Because to me, our lives are all about the trust that we have and the relationships we have and our own self-abilities and skills that we have, which then create miracles in our lives regardless of a pandemic. And the things that we can do, even during a pandemic, only have limits that we place on ourselves. And so I want to get rid of those limits. I want to throw them away and say, this is a great time to go find new avenues and new prospects. We just dropped a rocket, a rover, and a helicopter on Mars. What's your Mars? And what can you do, given the right help, given the right guidance, and given your desire to make a difference in your own life? Have a great weekend. We'll be back in on Monday. And until then, be safe and well. I know we've got lots of snow taking place in different parts and ice storms. And my goodness, I just pray for people to be safe and stick with my Live with Tony broadcast. And we'll see you next week.